Well, you went to Elizabeth Seton High School, I
I
guess,
did.
and which was a private all-girls Catholic school.
Correct.
You went there, and then you got your bachelor's degree in history from Chatham University.
Yes.
Then a master's in public policy from American University.
Correct.
But you said you never really envisioned yourself as a politician or a mayor. At what point during all that schooling did you say, okay, I want to get into politics?
I don't think I ever had that thought while I was going to school. I just knew at some point when I was in graduate school that I loved local government. I fell in love with it. I got an internship, and I knew that that was how I would help the most people and do it the fastest. So I thought I would be in local government, maybe run a government agency. And quickly, I realized that it is the elected official who can make things happen the fastest.
Okay, so I guess your first elected position was the Advisory Neighborhood Commission in 2004?
Yes, that's a
Okay.
volunteer position in DC. It's like it's like being a glutton for punishment, kind of. So you represent 2,000 people. Most people have full-time jobs, and you are there to make sure the government does what they want. And that's what I did.
Okay, so then after that in 2007, you were elected to the Council of District Columbia in a special election.
Yes.
So that was more of a kind of a mainstream kind of a position?
Yeah, so in DC, you know that we're unique, right? Not a city, not a county, not a state, and definitely not a territory. And we're unique also in the world in that we're the capital city of the United States of America, and we do not have voting representation in Congress. So we have a congresswoman, she doesn't vote. We don't have two senators at all. So anything that happens in the Senate, we could be left out of. Like we were left out of this CARES Act that the Congress just passed. And instead of giving us state funding like we get for everything, they called us a territory. In territories, they're great, they're fine, they're Americans, but they don't pay taxes like we do. So we pay taxes just like every Californian, New York, or Texan, you name it. We pay taxes just like every state. In fact, we pay more taxes than 22 states, and we pay more per capita than any state. So that is kind of the DC situation. So in our city, we have state functions, county functions, and city functions. So in a way, I'm the mayor, county executive, and the governor for 700,000 people. And we're also kind of unique in that our legislative body has only 13 people. So the 14 of us, our council of DC and me, we make the budgets, all legislative decisions, and execute the law. In some ways, that's really good because we can be nimble. We can come up with an idea, fund it, and implement it in a pretty short time. So the council, the role that you just mentioned, I was a ward council member. We have 13 council members, and I was one of them for almost 8 years.
Okay, and then in 2014, you decided to run for mayor.
I did.
What made you take on a job like that?
Um, Being mayor of your hometown is the best job you can ever imagine, especially in Washington, D.C. And I knew that we were going to have an election where a lot of people would run. And I said, I have great ideas. I have a great work ethic. I know this city. I know the past. I can see its future. I'm going to run. I can be mayor. And I was very fortunate. I was elected and then elected 4 years later. And now I'm serving in my second term as mayor of DC.
How did it feel to win that election?
It felt incredible. I felt very lucky. It's a humbling experience for sure, because at any position, I think you'll hear this from a lot of elected officials. People are literally trusting you with their life, and they're taking a bet on you in a lot of ways. They're taking a bet, most of all, that you're going to be honest, you're going to serve with integrity, and you are going to have more information about a lot of topics than they do. And you're going to use that information to make the best decisions for them and for the most people. And so it's really a position of trust.
Well, Netflix just put out a Dave Chappelle special where he was accepting the Mark Twain Award for
Yes,
comedy. And in that special, he was doing stand up. I guess it was in a DC comedy club
it was at the Improv. Yes,
at the Improv. And you were in the audience.
I was.
And he said, "Shout out to Muriel Bowser. We're only a year apart, and you run our city wonderfully.
Thank you.
You're a blessing to the city.
Yes.
I've never voted in Washington, but if I ever did, I'd vote for you."
Yes.
And then he said, "If you smoke crack, I'd still vote for you.
Well,
I know you wouldn't, but if you want to indulge yourself, you have that kind of wiggle room with me."
Well, you know Dave, and we are so proud of Dave. Dave went to Duke Ellington School of the Performing Arts, and he has never forgotten us. It kind of reminds me, I heard the mayor of Minneapolis one time say after Prince's death, she said about him that he was a megastar, a superstar, but he never left us and he never forgot us in Minneapolis. And that's how Dave is with Washington, D.C. And what you don't see, and probably what you didn't see in that special, is what the time that he spent with kids, aspiring artists like himself, and really pouring into them, challenging them, and never forgetting them. Dave, I think, has won 2 Emmys or Grammys, or maybe both, and brought them where they sit at Duke Ellington, so the kids can see that a kid from DC who has a dream, and in Dave's case, a mom who would drive him to comedy clubs so he could perfect his art, and teachers who believed in them at Duke Ellington, they can make it, and they can make it big.
Yeah, I actually looked it up. He has a Grammy for Best Comedy Album.
Okay.
And he also has a Primetime Emmy for The Chappelle Show.
Yep.
So you were right. Well, the comment he made about the smoking crack, he's referring to Marion Barry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Marion Barry actually supported your election.
He did.
Now, DC always has a very interesting history when it comes to Marion Barry. Marion Barry, after being elected mayor, he was caught on camera during an FBI sting operation smoking crack with a woman in a hotel room. He ended up serving 6 months in prison, and that just became kind of a black eye for DC. Chris Rock, during his comedy special, did the whole smoke crack and got your job back. Living in DC, how did you feel about that the whole Marion Barry thing when he got arrested?
Well, Marion Barry is one of a kind. And I think history will show that the good that he has done for DC and for Black people in particular, for growing a middle class and putting and making our city a contender. I mean, Marion Barry, in good ways and bad ways, put DC on the map. And so people knew that we were a contender. But he was a man. He wasn't perfect. He had frailties. And the damage that he did largely was to himself. And he paid the price. Personally, professionally, he paid the price. But he came back. And it's kind of a DC story in a lot of ways. I tell people all the time that we have the spirit in this town of falling down and getting back up, of dusting yourself off and trying again, of being a city of second chances. And so that's personified in Mayor Barry. So you can go all over this city in over all 8 wards, young people, old people, white people, Black people, straight people, gay people. I promise you, they have a Marion Barry story of how he impacted their life. So we erected a statue for Marion a couple years ago, just following his death. And I was very pleased to see a lot of things that were written and said about him reflected the totality of his life. And I had the opportunity to know him. So I'm proud of that.